Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Chop session by Product Mind. With me is Ted Yang and Ezinne and I'm Oji Udezwe. And here we talk almost every week about technology and society, especially artificial intelligence. Um, Last week, we talked about some of the problems we see in the uh, emerging ethics of technology and society, especially artificial intelligence. And today, we are going to go a little deeper into what we call the curse of AI riches. Look out for an article from us about this week. So, guys, we hit an interesting vein last week about the analogy of AI and, say, oil or gold in economy. So, um, who's going to kick us off? Like, explain the idea, what we think about it, etc.
Well, I'll start on the AI side. So the AI side is clearly a gold rush. Everyone understands what that means, but the specifics here are there is a lot of money flooding in. It's not being very specific about where it goes. There's a lot of people that prior did all sorts of other things. Now all of a sudden are AI, right? Now, if I've got a company, I have to be an AI company. If I have a product, it has to be an AI product. If I have a school, I have to have AI courses, right? So everything, just throw that AI on there. But of course, there's real money going into this and real money in the form of venture capital, real money going into obviously the valuations of the big firms that are in and around this. Just look at NVIDIA, our $5 trillion super gigantic mega corporation that's crushing everything. Massive money going into data centers, 50 billion here, 50 billion there, on and on and on. So it's definitely a gold rush in terms of AI. And, in terms of the curse or what's going on here, it is when there is a gold rush, anything that's not part of the gold rush is ignored. And a lot of times those are legitimate, real things that everyone just stops, right? So again, like a real gold rush, everyone stops to go pick up a pick and to start go digging because they think they're all going to suddenly strike it rich. So why bother working? Why bother doing anything except for doing AI? Because that's how you're all going to get rich.
Yes. So, isn't it? What's your how are you going to
No,
characterize this?
no, very, very well said. When I think about the world as a whole, right? We saw how left behind the rest of the world, quote unquote, was with the internet, right? So, um, as I think about that gap existing because the US moved forward, right? And many developing countries moved forward, and yet many other countries, at least the ones we're from, didn't quite make it there. I think about that now in the context of maybe even the United States alone, and just worry that, I mean, just a concern, not worry. I think worry is a strong word, but the concern to what Ted just shared is that we need to just remember that there are still real problems to be solved. And it's not just about slapping AI on everything. And we really still need to build education out. We need to make sure we're, you know, really continue to build brilliant talent and not relegating them to working with and through AI alone. But that AI remains like truly augmentative, and I'm concerned a little that that's happening. Like all the capital is going, like everything, you got to slap AI on it, and it doesn't allow us to have real conversations about real problems, real infrastructure gaps, real labor shortages, or just real issues. The tech industry's all the way over here, right? AIing everything. And I think there's a dichotomy that's existing even in conversation. Sometimes we can't even have a dialogue with those in healthcare, like in real healthcare, or people who are worried about epidemiological events, right? Like there's an epidemic happening, and we just can't wrap our heads around it in tech because we're all AIing everything. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a real concern. Just having watched the internet and the world, and then looking at the flight of capital, only AI right now.
So, I guess maybe one of the things, one of the things that we sort of pride ourselves in here at Product Mind is being able to help people peek under the covers. Why, not just like what things are happening, but why are things happening? And in that spirit, maybe we should re-explain a little bit how this crowding out works economically, because it's not like people don't have good intentions or people don't want to preserve resources for other things, but there is like this inexorable logic when things crowd out, when you discover a new natural resource, if that makes any sense. So just a quick primer. Uh, the curse of gold or the curse of oil, which is black gold, or the curse of natural resources is a very specific thing that happens. And we're making an analogy to artificial intelligence, where if you discover something that is really, really valuable in the world, especially internationally, this is key, and it's in your land, all of a sudden you're rich, right? Venezuela is rich with oil, like biggest oil deposits in South America. Nigeria is rich with oil, circa 1918 or whatever that is. Israel has gold. Chad has uranium. You can start to see the U.S. has plenty of natural resources. Uh, China has actually very mineable rare earth metals, etc. So the way it works is you discover this stuff, everybody wants it internationally. The only way they can buy it is through your currency, right? This is microeconomics. And they demand your currency to buy it. Your currency gets bid up because it's in high demand. And then all your carpenters and bakers and people who make paper, people who even make cars or whatever that is, all of a sudden, because your currency is super high, the cost of their goods, people buying, so exports, they can't export anything. So not only are they cut out of the export market because no one can afford the stuff that they're selling, everyone around them, everybody starts to work for the gold industry or the oil industry, and they don't have the best talent and so on and so forth. And that part of the economy starts atrophy. Now, this is what's happening in artificial intelligence. There's still a lot of stuff. Let's just say in technology itself, there are operating systems, there's a cloud that needs to be optimized, faster connections, all these things. If it's not involved in AI, all the funding, the smartest people are going to focus on AI, basically.
Mhm.
And then if you get out into the real economy, it's like education, boom, bakery, carpentry, art,
Forget it.
da
Yeah.
da da da. If you're not using it, look, the movie industry had a whole strike because they were protecting themselves from AI, right? And actually now there are AI artists and
Mhm.
actors
Mhm. Mhm.
emerging,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And everyone is running scared in the art industry because artificial intelligence is set to swallow it up. And we talked about this in technology. Like we could be in tech, but the people in AI are making so much money. Everyone wants to work in AI, not just technology. So this is what's happening. And we just think that it's a good way to, obviously anything in the world, you can look at it from different angles. And so this is the angle we're looking at it, which is the crowding out effect, which is economic, which is hard to fight,
Mhm.
We talked about a solution, and Ted and I actually met with a guy who is from Norway. Was it Norway? Yeah,
Mm.
Norway figured out a unique
Mhm.
solution, and
Mhm.
we talked to a guy who was Norwegian who had like a much more cynical take, an academic take last week. But yeah, AI is the boogeyman. AI is the new natural resource. And very later we'll talk a little bit about AI going to space, so you can see how bad this is. But
I do want us to be a little more what's the word? Like clear in
Careful.
that I don't
Oh.
know that AI is the boogeyman. It
Mhm.
is our response to it, right? How we choose to respond to it. If we keep thinking of it as um like again, we can have an abundance, and how we choose to respond is actually going to be the difference, because whether Norway had oil too, right? So oil itself is not the problem, but they chose a different path. They chose to have it work for them and not turn everything around working for it. So I just wanted to just clarify that it is not a big, it's just we. So the other thing that's actually really interesting is that I think part of this is when AI showed up in the US. That also has a part to play. If you think maybe 4 years ago, um, obviously we're coming out of COVID, interest rates were high, people were looking for growth, right? People were looking for profitability in their business. I think there was a big stagnation, to be transparent, in SaaS and in technology. So all of a sudden, this thing shows up, and we, I think that leaders in industry are clamoring to it because it is a new thing, right? So I think the timing also timing is affecting our people's response to AI. The VCs were struggling to, like, just if you really think about it, timing is actually what's exacerbating this situation, in my
Right. I
opinion.
mean, 100%. So if you want to be more cynical about it, which of course I usually am, it's that they needed a product to sell. Okay. The prior product of SaaS, everyone already bought. People were already buying into, it was already happening. They needed a new drug to get the people hooked up. And AI, boom. I mean, like, and again, we are AI evangelists. We are pro AI. We are not saying it's not real. We're just saying the effects and the magnitude of this. So let me just quickly talk about Norway just for 3 seconds in case you don't know. Again, go ask ChatGPT to summarize it for you or look on Wikipedia. The difference between Norway and other countries is that they created a separate fund, a sovereign wealth fund, to hold the vast majority of the profits from oil, right? And their point of view was this: we have seen the path that other countries have gone down, Venezuela or Nigeria, and plenty of other examples, right? We don't want that path, right? We want it controlled, especially since their population is so low. We want it controlled. We want the proceeds of this to benefit our entire country, our entire society, not just the segment that's going to make the money here, right? And certainly not just the foreign interests. So if you want to come here to Norway and you want to go drill offshore and get oil, wonderful. We're going to hive off that money, and then we're going to be more reasonable about how we do it. And now that's trillions and trillions of dollars in their sovereign wealth fund, right? Like unbelievable amounts of money. And now, and if you read anything, you can read that the public services, which are already amazing in Europe and already amazing in the Nordic countries, in Norway are even another level, right? They literally have so much money that they can paper over a lot of their problems, which of course in itself is a problem. But let's not focus on Norway. The thing about AI that it was different here in their case when they had their gold rush or oil rush, and what's different in AI here, and what Ezinne you were talking about, and OG you're talking about, is how we treat it, right? How are we doing this? Like, what is the deliberateness of what we're doing to protect people? We've already previously said we're not doing enough, and we're doing it terribly, right? Letting capitalists try to protect people's jobs. I mean, good luck with that, right? But this is bigger than that. This is bigger than that. This is even within. This is basically setting up the forces that will kill the golden goose, right? So if you don't create enough education, you don't create enough people entering the workforce and staying in the workforce, doing all of the other things, and everyone just works for this very narrow bit of AI, the whole thing falls over, right? That's a super brittle infrastructure, no infrastructure even. The whole thing will just collapse on its own weight. Now, and now, of course, you can sit there and say, but that's capitalism, man. That's the way it's supposed to work. Okay, whatever. And again, everyone said, that's great when everyone's getting rich. And then once it crashes, everyone goes, oh my God, I can't believe that nobody was being responsible. Back when I was like making myself a trillionaire, no one else was being responsible. It's all your fault, not my fault. I was just doing my thing. And that's the cycle that we have, unfortunately.
The cop out of capitalism, which is that somehow the market is all-knowing hand. The Miltonian economics is. I think
Crazy.
if you've done enough education, I think you should be super suspect about it. You guys have touched on so many things that I feel like I need to riff on. The first funniest one is, remember the last thing that VCs thought was going to make them a lot of money? Blockchain.
Blockchain.
Does anyone remember that one? The blockchain
Yeah.
was supposed to be the next thing. So it does feel like the VC industry needs the next big thing every 5 years in order to sort of excite LPs to, give money so that they can make all these bets and charge all these fees. So just something to put in your hat and smoke a little bit.
Uh,
Like, there has
It's
to
a
be
little new. It is.
something pushing people to invest in the future. So you always need something. whether it's real or not. And to be clear, it has been real, right? $2 trillion since the cloud made. Um, and what people don't understand is, I think maybe we understand it so well, but let's just say it. The richest people in the world are technologists or people who are founders who have sold their products to millions of people. The Bill Gateses from generation one, the Googles
Larry
from
and
generation
Sergey.
one. The Zuckerbergs from generation, like 2.5, Bezos, all of these things. And people, I think, don't understand that every natural resource, international natural resource, creates these people. Gold powered the world. Mansa Musa, Egypt, Rome, powered by gold. Let's just be clear, right? Gold was the thing. And then it became oil, right? The robber barons, what did they transact in? So for 100 years, they were the richest people in the world because of gold. And now we are in the technological era, the richest people in the world. Elon Musk just got a payday of $1 trillion.
Potential
right?
payday, but yes.
Potential,
Potential payday. Like, honestly, dude, his company is worth more than Nvidia, which is mad. Just to be clear, right? But that it is. But I think, again, in the interest, I'm going to come off sound like a professor after this episode. Software works because the marginal cost of production is zero. Nothing else on the planet is like that. We make one thing. It's software. It's virtual. Bits and bytes runs on a processor. You sell it to 1 billion people for $5. You made 5 billion. You sell it to 2 billion for $5. You just made 10 billion. Selling it to 2 billion and cost us only to 1 billion at that scale is not much more cost. It's just not. So this is why when the marginal cost of production is zero, there's nothing else like that. You mine gold, you mine diamonds that are worthless. People are, creating a new diamond costs you time and money. Selling the 1,000,000,001 piece of software, Microsoft Word, does not cost you very much money. So this is what you understand. And AI is going to take this to the next level. Like, AI will make it so that out of 8 billion people will be so productive that 100 million will feed the rest of us, could create enough productivity for the rest of us. Now, the problem is, if that takes all the investment, we should actually be re-architecting society. We should be re-architecting reward. If 100 million feed us and we pay only 100 million, how will 7 billion starve?
So like, Aji, like when you talk about the VCs, right? I think that you and I, we all agree AI is not necessarily like blockchain, right? I think that it's
No,
more
it's
like
not.
the
I'm just talking
internet,
about the
right?
last.
I know. The last
Yeah,
3 years, like wanting to clamor onto something. And I'm gonna make a comment, and then I don't know if it's gonna be revelatory to y'all as it has been to me. Is that we continue to treat AI as the solution, versus continuing to seek the solutions for all the different ails that we as a society and industries have, leveraging AI. And that's the thing that I think is the biggest mistake. We're looking at it as this thing that solves all ills, and versus looking at it as the tool to help us solve all ills. And our focus is on it versus how it can help us in all areas. And that's the change that I think will happen eventually, because the current rush is taking us to a place where there are fewer haves, right? Trying to sell to the have-nots, no money there. There are more people trying to solve, and we haven't created the same unit economics with AI as we have done with software. So we need to, if we really can, I'm just saying, somebody out there, whoever's listening, right, really think about how do we leverage AI in a way that truly allows us to have the same unit costs and unit economics as we did in software. It's possible. There is a networking of smaller language models that allows us to not necessarily need all these costs profiles that we currently do. I think once we get there, things can change. But the fear is that everybody has the people who have power have blinders on and are looking towards this big LLM, the one that solves it all, the AI of it all, right? That
Yeah,
is the solution
AGI,
to
man.
everybody's
AGI is going to
problem.
solve everything. I mean, you heard Zuckerberg. That's our entire business model. We're going to create the singularity, and everything else is just gravy, right? Now, listen, I think it's a feature, not a bug, as an A, meaning the spending is what people want. The inefficiency they like, because that means hard assets that require dollars. Why are we still talking about data centers in terms of cost? This is crazy, not power, like in terms of compute power. We're talking about them in terms of how much it costs to build them. Okay. And now you can spend and overspend money all you want. And in fact, maybe this is a reasonable segue, but how much work is being done on making AI more efficient? Very little, I think, is the answer. Why? Because it's not good for business. It's good for business to spend more money using more tokens, building more data centers, which creates a nice little circle, right? Buying more chips from NVIDIA, boom, 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 right? Like, keep that flywheel going. Let's make more and more money, right? That's I think, a feature, not a bug.
I think that actually I have a counter to that. Well, first of all, if I were in Asia, Vietnam, or Nigeria, my actual mission in AI would be to crash the cost of tokens. That would be my singular mission.
Ah,
It'll be to crash the cost, and it'll be a very subversive act, because crashing the cost would mean that the ability for the 8 billion human to use AI would be better, because it'll be like air. It'll be nothing for them. And that makes hopefully a fairer world, if that makes any sense. So, one laptop per child, whatever that is, there's a crash the cost AI project that people who don't have access to all these data centers have to undertake. And, Ezinne and I there are things that we've talked about, and there are things that we imagine that hopefully head in that direction. But here's a real thing. How many people in the world can AI address at the moment? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we in tech, we always underestimate the diffusion rate of technology. Of 8 billion people, how many people are using AI? We're probably in the millions, right? Which is nothing,
nothing.
right? We're sort of the
Mm-hmm.
elites who spend all our time perseverating about this, talking about this, and so on and so forth. For most people, it is a no op, as we say in computer
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it turns out actually that when you make something, I mean, the consumer goods industry knows this. If you make something cheaper and more accessible, you actually make more money, right? Because all of a sudden you go from 100 million people buying it to a billion people buying it. And
Exactly.
so 100 million times $20 margin versus a billion people times one, like $2 margin, which is better, if that makes any sense. So actually, I think a case can be made for probably not less data centers, but it is each data center doing much more efficiently
Mm-hmm.
in order to
Mm-hmm.
extend this to us in combined with thinking about how this affects society, right? Combined with how this affects us. Like, instead of trying to make so much money from artificial intelligence, like we are hell bent on doing, how about we try to make every human an X-Men, a super powered person? Can we
There
do
you go.
that? Can you imagine what that would do for the planet if we tried to make everyone super powered and that was our goal? Different metric. Anyway.
Yeah. Amazing. No, but you're
So
100%. We talked about this before, right? How do people that aren't in a major tech power compete? And I think that's absolutely right. Like, put your best and brightest and do something that will, like, disturb the world order. But, like, sorry, but we're exaggerating, but I think the point is there. And I think maybe we should segue to some of the other things that we wanted to talk about today, because I think it's a reasonable point, if you guys are down with that. Um,
yeah, I
so
think before
yeah,
we do though, I want us to be realistic, which is we are still in a capitalistic society. People want to make money.
and
So
we are
that
capitalists,
shift
people. Let's just so we're clear. We like money. We
that
want everyone to get
I
rich. Let's
know. It's just we need to be aware that just like oil built oligarchs, right? AI will build some aristocracies from this process. And I think all we're saying is, as long as we're going in clear-eyed and really understanding the ramifications of what this means, then maybe we can at least bring those who are doing this can bring others along. Because in the long run, if we don't, society begins to break down in some way. I think that's all we're saying, because I don't see altruism being the path in any way. But intentional capitalism, if anything, that is the best we can hope for or ask for at this point. With a
Fair.
conscience, capitalism with a conscience of sorts.
Wow. Fair.
Isn't
Fair.
that oxymoronic? Like, really? Like, who is that? Like democratic socialism, or what are we talking about
Which is
here?
the thing.
I
That's
don't,
the
I
thing.
don't know.
There's a party called the Democratic Socialists.
I don't.
Who's gonna be the Mamdani of?
Exactly.
Okay, so I think actually before we segue, I think that we gotta have an episode where we are like AI rah rah rah, because people are gonna think that we don't want to make money
That's
from
fine.
artificial intelligence.
No,
No, we're
it's
big
just we
believers.
see inequality being. Yeah, we just see
We're
an
gonna do a
amplification of
King Kong
inequality if we're
episode.
not careful. We see
Exactly.
we see an erosion of skills, capabilities, craft if we don't really lean in, and we know that there's a problem. So we want to call it out now and ensure that others are also thinking the same thing. That's all. What we believe. Rah rah rah. AI, go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So
Okay. Ted, you
So
wanted to get us somewhere else.
let's talk a little bit about something that's related to the topic of data centers, or the topic of tokens, right? Which is that we have an article about some new technologies that just came out, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that, right? And so there are two technologies that we talked about there. And the first one is directly relevant to this concept of using fewer tokens. And this is something that came out of DeepSeek. Now, people, you may remember DeepSeek, right? Because DeepSeek are the people that made huge waves from China when they essentially say, listen, we can do LLM for less, right? Here we go. And we open sourced it. Here we go, right? Boom. And a lot of people are using it. And of course, there are a lot of powerful open source LLMs out there. And they were certainly one of the earlier ones. Now, the key of what this technology is to treat large, complicated textual documents as images, right? And the idea there is to reduce token usage, right? And again, please read the article; it's in our Substack. But we're talking order of magnitude, right? We're talking about a different way to store information, which, interestingly enough, may mirror the way in which our brains work, maybe, again, because we don't really know that much. But the idea of, hey, if we take a visual image of a whole bunch of text, okay, we can then, melt or load the parts of it that we need to pay attention to, right? So just think about focusing your eye on one part of that image, and now that's in sharp definition. The rest of it is blurry because you're not looking at it anyway, right? And so that's the layman's way of looking at this paper. Again, links to this paper are in our Substack. You can also find it yourself. And the point is, this technology is transformative, or can be transformative, in terms of reducing token usage, right? And token usage, as we know, is the major cost, right? So now, yes, we see per token costs going down by and large when we have new LLMs ish. But the amount of tokens being used, in terms of efficiency of the number of tokens being used, we're not seeing a lot of innovation there. Want to be cynical? Refer back a few minutes in this conversation. But let's talk about this technology, because I think, again, we need more of these kinds of things. We need more of different ways of thinking about how we can be efficient in the use of tokens, because that's what democratization is going to be. And then, even if you don't care about democratization across people or across countries, and all you care about is cool stuff, how about this? This is how you're going to end up with better AI models on your phone and in your pocket. Lower power devices, right, that don't have storage, don't have all this stuff that these super awesome data centers that are hooked by high-speed fiber. Your phone doesn't have that. Well, now you can run very powerful stuff. Again, we wrote a Substack about that too, right? Supercomputer in your pocket. Same idea. This is the kind of technology innovation that's going to get us there.
I think the thing that I'm most excited about is that it wasn't obvious how much more innovation would come out of. I think if you listen to most of the researchers and the papers from 2013, 2017, 2019, 2020, they were shooting for AGI so hard that we thought like there'll be like a year or two and we'll go from GPT-4 to AGI. We're like AGI, AGI, AGI. And I think what's been clear is that we are sort of in the infancy of transformers, right? And there's so
Mm-hmm.
many directions. And like I said, one actual planet changing goal will be how to crash the cost of tokens. And this technology really points to a direction, which is sort of like knowledge compression through images. I have lots of questions, after reading the paper. It's like, well, are there other techniques for, you know, knowledge compression? Does a zip file work? Or is it just an image? Or are there 10,000 ways to do this sort of compression? So it's hard to tell. So yeah, I think it's self-evident that this is going to change the game. And I think the question is, can we do 1,000x of that? I think those are the things in my mind in terms of worry about, because that would change the planet for real. It might not be good for the way people are spending money, but like it'll be really good for everybody,
Mhm.
Yeah. Given what
including
given what we
founders.
said earlier, oh, sorry. Given what we said earlier, visual tokens completely excited about it and the cost. But what I in that paper we wrote, the thing that I was stoked about was more on the graph merge side of things, and that is just a really interesting way for building knowledge graphs, right? And
Can you explain? Can
shortening
you explain that
the
and the implications a little more, maybe for people?
so I can speak more about the implications, but like GraphMer is actually it's in that it combines neural learning, right, with symbolic graph-based representations. And the long and short of it, at least as a product leader, the thing that matters the most for me is that it begins to allow for better provenance, right? You are able to construct better knowledge graphs with better links to where that knowledge came from. And in my world, where I begin to see this mattering the most is like we've talked about LLMs for a long time. And as you guys know, we've debated this idea of LLMs versus SLMs. And there's at least in my opinion, and a few of you, is that we know that we begin to see amazing things happen when we start building these smaller language models that are very domain specific. And when you begin to work on these domain specific things, auditability becomes important because it is saying that its knowledge is the authority on a particular item. And the ability for you to have that learning happen and yet create a knowledge graph that truly is in fact auditable and you can know what its source is important, because prior to the ability to do this, I spent a lot of my career working on data catalogs and data dictionaries and data just trying to track data, and
Oh yeah.
this changes the game for us. Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily know the details of how it all works, but ontology, like it just ensures that the ontology of your data source is well maintained and allows you to uh um just it allows for a lot more data tracking, data understanding, knowing exactly uh, where it allows particularly for domain specific strength, right? And that's what I'm excited about as a product leader. You can build true domain knowledge versus relying on these generic text models, which are good right now. But for the innovation that is required to change the world, we will have to go to domain specific language models and systems, and this is a technology that I think will allow for us to validate sources, ensure that an expert model truly is an expert model.
Yes, I agree. I was reading a few things about how someone said, listen, we don't need better LLMs or bigger LLMs. We need better provenance, right? We need better justification of the results that come from even our existing LLMs, right? And this is, of course, especially true in regulated industries, okay? Think healthcare, think legal, think finance, okay? So, you know, hey, somebody deciding what they want to have for dinner or like, figuring out, what plane ticket to buy or whatever. Hey, it's kind of important, but it's not life changing. Okay. But literally what your doctor is doing. Okay. Now, what is the provenance? What is what is the thought process? Now, again, previously we had an article talking about referencing an academic article that says that, the models that explain the way that they think, call it whatever you want, everyone has a different name for that, is bunk, right? Like, that's just performing what you want as the human asked it to code, and it's what it's doing. It's not actually the way it's thinking. Okay, this is something different. This is a little bit sidestepping that. It's saying, look, here's your tree of knowledge, right? Here's your ontology of all of the data and knowledge that you're going to feed into this, and here's the provenance of that data. And as you iterate and learn and add more branches to the tree, you're still enhancing, the model, are
Maintaining.
still enhancing that provenance, right? So you're developing this quote unquote chain of custody, right, of the data and the
Yeah.
facts and the things that you're developing, right? And this is huge, right? Because if you think about how, let's say, medical science works or legal or anything's work, it's all about chain of custody. It's all about, I need to trace this back, okay, to first principles, or the first thing I did this morning when this experiment, all of that. I get able to trace all that stuff down to where I got today and be very reliable and in a heartbeat, right? Because if anywhere that chain breaks, then the conclusion that you reach today is wrong, right? Give the patient this. Well, that's not right, because all the way around the way, that is not the decision you should be making, right? Okay, and more legal or regulated industries. Okay, it is super important that everything down there. Now, this kind of maybe starts to sound like blockchain. This is not blockchain. Just before anyone starts to think about this, not
It's a
blockchain.
knowledge graph.
Knowledge graph,
Yeah.
not blockchain.
So Ted, even for non-regulated industries, and this is actually really important. My job was to try and get enterprise clients to adopt features. And
Hmm.
the reality is, when you build software, everything is great when every consumers are using it, but things really begin to happen when enterprises start to use solutions, right? And even when I built Insight products, people wanted to know how I came to that conclusion. Why did I make that recommendation? So for enterprise software that are based on LLMs, the ability to actually explain why the system concluded that is going to be important, because enterprises want to know that they're basing their decisions and understand the why behind it. So that's the big thing. So even for non-regulated, to get system-wide adoptions in a way that enterprises feel very comfortable with your solution, if it is backed by an LLM in any way, this is actually becomes really important. It opens things up too.
Can I
Yeah.
just say, actually, I want to make a prediction. I think that every LLM of note will use GraphMer in the future. Like, I just think that, y-
Yeah.
you know, this whole idea of hallucination, of data verification, it's not just for, yeah, I agree with it, and it's not just for regulated industries. I think that being able to trace what a knowledge is for, imagine, like, when we found this paper, I sent it to my team because there's stuff we're building around knowledge graphs and on the Fabric team. And we've been thinking about this because we're trying to create, part of the product is creating a digital twin of a person. And there's so much that goes into figuring out what a person is thinking based on the evidence of their feeds. And I think GraphMer is going to be huge for us, even if it's not precisely using a model. It's just like using the techniques to figure stuff out. So I just think that people who are serious about working on AI, just like we are gonna find that this technique and its the things that it makes are absolutely essential. I just don't see how. And thank God this is just research and it's in in open domain, because this is crazy. This is really
No,
pivotal, I think.
there are other MERTs out there, but GraphMer, the promise of it, and it is going to be a favorite word, Audrey, because you use it a lot, is that its promise is traceability and trust, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I think we are going to be in a trust
Trust
community,
is
right? So
the
that's
product
one.
for the AI
Trust is the
age.
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
Trust is the product.
but I think that enterprise requires traceability. When you think about
Mm,
SSOs and all the things that allow for something to be enterprise
mm.
level, is always about logs and this and that traceability. So
You're right.
when GraphMerge promises traceability and trust, I think that to me, when I read the papers, I was like, okay, this. I wish I had this back when I was working on all this stuff, trying to do it manually.
Fair enough. That's a good
We're
insight.
clearly very excited. We're clearly very excited about GraphMer. Visual compression is great. Okay, why don't we? How about the fact that they're building data centers in space, guys? What do you like? What's going on?
Hey, why not? Why not? There's all
Did you
that
guys?
space out
So,
there. What are we doing with it?
so it dropped this week that Google is trying to build data centers in space, And if you are geek and you understand physics, you're like, wait, what? And as you dig into it, you start to see that for the last 2 decades, we've been solving some of the problems. Latency gone, Starlink, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Solar works better in space. There is no atmosphere and attenuation. The sun, you can just reap the sun, right?
Yep.
Especially
Yep.
for like data center type workloads. You can't like put solar power in space to power the entire planet. You might as well just do it on the Earth. But if you have like, I don't know, football sized field of compute, you can actually do that really well. It zips around the planet, powers itself through solar or nuclear, and then when it does inference, it just zips it over the planet through low Earth orbiting satellites. And so it might be, which sounds actually utopian, that we will stop burdening the planet, but in the 2030s with all these water sucking, energy sucking, grid devouring data centers, and would they just zipping around in space? I like it. It seems really elegant. What do you guys think?
I like it, man. And listen, I'm a science fiction nerd. I love this stuff. So many science fiction writers have predicted this kind of thing. Okay, and so it's awesome to see that this is reality and people are actually throwing money into this. It makes tons of sense. I think that the technology is super interesting. Let's not forget that the space boom of moving things into space, right? Like the whole privatization of space. Thanks to SpaceX and Blue Origin and all these other places. I mean, pluses and minuses, but the reality of it is they've figured out how to move payloads to space for cheaper, right? That's,
Mhm.
again, part of the game.
So, two minds. Extremely excited because when I spend time with this next generation, they keep talking about how AI sucks up all the energy, and I just know that a lot of them are not thrilled about the, the world we're going to be leaving them with. So this begins to address some of that. Particularly, I'm just really, really excited for this to bring and bear fruit. The only thing that is on my mind, which I'll always ask, what are the things that can go wrong? Capitalism, right? Gone wrong in this case. What does that look like? And what are the implications that we're not thinking about? The debris in space. How do we, just little tiny things, not major. We can
Little
solve
thing.
them. I know we can. But
What do you mean?
I would say that if anything, I'm walking away excited when I think about the very pale blue dot, the Earth in context of the galaxies and all the things out there. It makes sense. Why not
Makes
take all that space and have it leverage it to drive outcomes for us? But we just got to be mindful of how we do it. So I'm stoked if we can make it work.
Why don't we could, you know what? Well, let's do it around Mercury.
Yeah,
Like,
why not?
no
Too hot.
space junk around the Earth on Earth, Terra. We could do it,
Huh?
do it on some other planet. This is what we gotta do. I'm
Yeah.
kind of
Well, I
joking, but
mean,
I'm also kind of
We
look,
have
serious.
you have
spoiled our
latency.
Earth so much that we need to go somewhere else and junk that one up too.
We need a
Oh,
garbage
yeah.
planet. We need a garbage planet.
Hell yeah. We need a
That's what we
plan
need. A
B
garbage
planet.
planet.
Plan B planet, man. Plan B. Plan B.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us as we work out some of our most intrusive thoughts on
Ah,
artificial intelligence. And I hope you have a good week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.
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 Cheers.